What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here, back again with the Awesemo team, talking some college football DFS. Conference championships are over, so it is a short week. We have just one game. It is the Army-Navy game. And before we get started, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when this and all other content goes live. Diving into this, we have a standalone game, and we will take you behind the glass, showing you some of our tools at Awesemo. This is our player usage, so you can see everything these players have been doing over the season, over the last 4 games. We have written articles, projections, ownership projections, everything you need for this game and through all of bowl season. Navy taking on Army. Right now, Army is the 7.5-point favorite. Obviously, we have 2 triple option teams here, so the total is sitting at just 34 points, a very low total in terms of college football. But both of these teams have been susceptible against the run at times. Very low rushing numbers per game, at least allowed. But a lot of this stems to both these teams playing slow. When you break this down to a per attempt basis, when you look at things like pro football grades, these teams are actually below average in terms of run defense. So there could be some points scored. Now, starting for DFS purposes, at the captain spot, we want to consider runners. So that's going to be the quarterbacks, the running backs, the slot backs. And then because of the showdown nature, we might actually have to consider some receivers for GPPs when we don't normally do so. Starting with the Navy side, Tai Lavatai is the quarterback here. He has 309 cumulative rushing yards on the year. Navy, they only have 3 wins, so they've been in a little more negative game script than Army. So the sacks have occurred somewhat more frequently for Navy, but Lavatai still has a pretty strong ceiling. Navy, unlike Army, is still going to use the fullback of the engine as the engine of the offense. So Lavatai doesn't have the same ceiling in terms of workload, but ultimately Navy does not use a timeshare quarterback while Army does. So Lavatai is still going to be a pretty good captain option because the workload is pretty consistent for him. He's averaging 17.4 carries per game. However, that has dropped in recent weeks. He has 6 carries, 12 carries, and 12 carries in the last 3 games. So we haven't seen the same workload we did at the beginning of the year, but ultimately Lavatai is still a good option here. At the fullback position, Navy uses multiple backs led by Isaac Ruos. He averages 14.5 carries per game, but in the last 3 games, he's been over that twice, 22, 6, and 18 carries, averages 55 yards per game, and he's tied for the team lead in touchdowns. So Ruos is a pretty strong option here. However, you can save a good amount of money by going to backup fullback James Harris, who's only $6,000 on DraftKings. He averages 9 touches per game, so it's not that far off of Ruos, and he just saves you so much salary, you can jam in more consistent options at the top. Occasionally, you'll see third-string fullback Kai Palua Rojas come into the game. He doesn't have more than 2 carries in any of the last 4 games, but if one of those is a touchdown at the stone minimum, he's somebody that could potentially just give you the avenue to all the studs. At the slot back position, so the triple option features slot backs. These are kind of guys that line up on the edges, handle carries somewhat infrequently, but more often than some of these backups, and then they're occasionally used in the pass game. The 2 starters for Navy are Carlinos AC and Chance Warren. Carlinos AC has been more dynamic on the ground. He averages 49.5 yards per game compared to Warren's 22.8, but Warren is a lot more active as a pass catcher, and he actually is second on the team in targets with 19, only 1 target behind the team lead in Michael Cooper. So both of them have their merits. AC being a little more consistent on the ground is where I would side because he's also cheaper on both platforms. He's outcarried Warren in 3 of the last 4 games, and we know the carries are going to be more consistent with Navy. And then from there, Daniel Jones is kind of a backup running back way deep on the board. I don't think you're really getting to anyone outside of Ruos, Harris, AC, Warren, and Rojas. In the receiving game, we just mentioned Warren as the second leading receiver. The actual receiving leader is going to be Michael Cooper, 20 targets on the year. He averages 1.8 targets per game, 17 yards. He's a little cheaper than Warren, but again, the floor is just not there because he doesn't see work in the run game. You could go much, much cheaper and play a guy like Umbarger, who's at 8,400, saw 5 targets in their last game, but still only has 12 on the year. Or you could play Mark Walker, who has just 8 targets, only 1 target in the last 4 games, but he's right above the stone minimum. Ultimately, these are GPP targets because of the inconsistency. For reference, Rojas, the fullback, is going to be a lot more consistent than Mark Walker, and he's at a cheaper price. So again, these receivers are just GPP plays. On the Army side, again, they use a quarterback by committee. It is Christian Anderson leading the way. Tyler also sees some work. how these guys are deployed. Anderson is going to start, and he is going to be the player they use when they throw the ball. Tyler did not attempt to pass in their most recent game, and they're going to split the work on the ground with a slight lean towards Anderson. Right now, he's at a very expensive price, but basically the upside for Anderson is a lot higher than Tyler, but both are viable. Tyler more so in GPPs, Anderson more of a cash play. But Army does use the quarterback as the engine of their triple option, which makes this a little harder to predict. And it makes Jacoby Buchanan a little bit of a weaker play here. Buchanan, he's cheaper than Anderson, more expensive than Tyler. You just wish the volume was more consistent. He only averages 10 carries per game, 37 yards in the ground. So you can see how much Army does use their quarterback. And it's unfortunate they platoon that position. Behind Buchanan, you're going to see Anthony Akins at times. He missed their most recent game. And when that happened, Buchanan popped up for 21 carries. Typically, they're splitting. So if Akins is not warming up, you could play Buchanan at a much safer play here. But Akins would siphon off a lot of that work. You also are going to see Tyson Riley carry somewhere between 5 to 10 times as the third string fullback. He would obviously be a much better play if Akins misses the game, 4,500 for him. Like Navy, they use slot backs. And the leader here is Tyrell Robinson, just 6.4 carries per game, but 53.5 yards. So he's explosive when he does touch the ball. He's actually their leading rusher among the ball carriers, and he's done it on such little opportunity that he's the GPP target that has the capability to break one of these big plays. Tyrell Robinson, certainly somebody you want to look at. From there, we also have A.J. Howard. He's somebody you could look at. 2.1 carries per game for him, just not a ton of work. And one last player to mention, Cade Barnard, 7 carries in their last game. He's also a fullback, so he would be affected by Anthony Akins here too. Not a ton to really like with Barnard, assuming that we have a full and healthy complement of skill position players. Like Barnard, the backup that you will see run the most at slot back is Brandon Walters, 2 carries in the last game, but only 2.2 carries per game. Ultimately, behind Buchanan, Akins, if he plays, and Tyrell Robinson, these are very volatile players, GPP only. In the receiving game, Isaiah Alston is the clear alpha for this team. He has 29 targets and nobody else has more than 10. Tyrell Robinson, the slot back, actually tied for second on the team in targets and second on the team in receiving yards, adding a little more safety to his game. But Alston's the only guy who's been targeted at least once in each of the last 4 games. He averages 3 targets per game, 38.5 yards. He's just very expensive for a receiver on a triple option offense. From there, Brahim Murphy is the second most targeted receiver, tied with Tyrell Robinson, averages about a target per game, 10 yards per game. Ryken Donaldson is somebody who will also play a decent amount. So is Cole Catterbone. Both of them are extremely cheap. So if you're looking for a flyer at the position, Donaldson 6 targets in the year, Catterbone 3, but Catterbone has recently played. As far as routes and snaps, Catterbone has led Donaldson in recent weeks. So that's just worth noting. Neither of whom are particularly strong plays on the game. But that is the player usage. Again, let me know in the comment section who your favorite play is. Would love to hear it. I am Matt Gajewski on Twitter at Matt_Gajewski. Enjoy this historic game. I certainly will. And good luck. We'll catch you guys again for bowl season.